Namaste, this is the physicist, and in this lecture we are going to understand the concept of curl with an intuitive touch, so that we can intuitively understand what curl actually means and why is it formulated the way it is formulated. And the prerequisites would be vector algebra and calculus. That means if you've already gone through vector algebra and you've done some calculus, especially multivariate calculus like partial differentiation at the least, and then if you've done vector calculus, vector differentiation like gradient, divergence and curl, you're going to make the most out of this lecture. So let's begin by showing how the curl is denoted. So the curl of a vector field V is given as like this, and if you try to expand it, then it is like in the determinant form. Okay, we are not going to expand this determinant right now because we are going to do it soon enough, but first of all let's understand why is this determinant formulation used to describe curls. And you can clearly see that when we try to find the curl, there is a cross product involved, and this cross product is not exactly a cross product between two vectors, because this del operator is not essentially a vector, it's a vector operator, and this is given by del is x cap del upon del x plus y cap del upon del y plus z cap del upon del z. So this is just a vector operator, okay, but there is a cross product, there is a crossing of the del operator and the v vector, which is actually a vector field. So first of all, let's understand what's a vector field. Okay, what is the difference between a vector and a vector field? So if I want to express a vector, for example a vector v, I want to write it as x cap plus y cap plus z cap. It could actually describe a vector field in itself. What is a vector field and what is a vector? If I assign, for example, 5 and I give this value as 6 and z as 7, this becomes a vector. Okay, but if I write it as like this, like for example x, instead of x you can write any variable here, y any variable again, z any variable, you can make it x, y, z or whatever you want to put there. If you write this write the vector like this, it becomes a vector field, because for any three-dimensional space where the basis vectors are x cap, y cap and z cap, or the three coordinate axis, you can assign any point, you can take any point in this region, and this formula for the vector field actually will describe, depending on what coordinate you are taking, it will describe a vector there, it will describe a vector here, it will describe a vector there, it will describe a vector there, depending on the expression of the vector field. Okay, so vector field is basically a distribution of vectors at corresponding points in a region of space, which is a region of vector space. Okay, so vector field is nothing but the distribution of vectors at points inside a region where you have defined the vector field. Okay, so vector field is just a distribution of vectors at individual points, and vector is what exactly the value of the vector is at any specific point, right? So what is curl? It essentially, without going into the formulation, we'll understand why the formulation is done the way it is. First of all, let's understand what the curl is. For example, if there is if I define this particular area or space in 2 dimension as my region, and in that region there are many points, okay, infinitely many points. If it is just 2 dimensions, I can take it as xy plane, But instead of writing this as xy plane, there is a much more convenient way. You can just write it as z xy. Then you can, instead of writing as xy plane, you can also say that it is a z plane. Okay, because every plane is easily denoted by the normal to the plane. Okay, so in the z plane, now each point will have a coordinate xy. Okay, any point I take, it will have two coordinates, x coordinate and y coordinate, if it is a z plane. And at any point there is a vector. There is a vector defined by my vector field. Now if I take a point like that, if I take this particular point, okay, in its immediate neighborhood, okay, there will be again vectors in its neighborhood. My question is, in the neighborhood, the vectors that exist in the neighborhood of my reference point, do those vectors have a tendency to a circular or rotational tendency, a swirling tendency? Are they, in general, when I take all the vectors in the neighborhood, do they have a clockwise rotational tendency or an anti-clockwise rotational tendency? If I want to know that, then I would have to use the method of finding the curl of the vector field around this particular point xy, whatever point I choose. If I want to know whether the vectors around this particular point in its immediate neighborhood have a net clockwise or anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, clockwise or counterclockwise rotational tendency, then I will say that it does have the vector field does have a curl around at this point. And the vector field has a curl around this point. And if it does not have a net tendency, I mean, if there is equal amount of clockwise and clockwise and anti-clockwise tendencies, then both of them will cancel each other and will give me a zero curl. But if there is a net anti-clockwise or net clockwise tendency, then there will be some sort of curl, okay, whether it is positive curl or negative curl. And by positive, negative, by convention we use the right hand thumb rule, where we define the clockwise rotation as negative and the anti-clockwise rotation as positive. Okay, when that means if the rotation happens with the natural tendency of the right hand fingers, then the thumb gives you the direction. Okay, this is the natural tendency of my right hand, of your right hand fingers. Naturally they tend to curl like this. If that is what the rotation of the plane follows, then the thumb gives you the direction, which is the positive z axis in this case. And if it is the clockwise tendency of rotation, then it gives my thumb of the right hand gives you the direction of the rotation. Okay, so that is clockwise, that means it's negative. Negative means it's negative z axis. Positive means it's positive z axis, because in most of the cases it's easier to mention the plane by the normal, which is the z axis, if the plane is xy plane, right? So this is the basics. So the concept is, the curl of a vector field around a specific point gives you the net tendency, the net rotational tendency of the vector field around that point. I hope that has been clear. But the question is, why do we formulate? How does our definition of curl, intuitive definition of the curl, translate to the determinant form? Why do we use that determinant expansion or determinant method to formulate our curl? Okay, why exactly is that? So as you see, there is a cross product between the del operator and the vector field when you try to formulate curl. That means we need to understand the vector product. Okay, if only you understand the vector product between two vectors, let's say a and b, on this particular plane again xy, then you will be able to easily relate to that of the curl. Okay, so what basically is a cross b? That means there are two vectors. If there are two vectors a and b and they are oriented at an angle theta, so the cross product is basically if a is crossed by b, then a crosses the entire length of b like this. It crosses and comes to the head of b. Okay, so this is again a. If that happens, this describes a parallelogram. Okay, the parallelogram has an area which is, what is this? This is A sine theta and this is B. So basically the area of the parallelogram, if I write the area as delta, then it becomes A B sine theta. However, that is only the magnitude of the cross product. We define it as AB sine theta times n cap. Okay, n cap being the unit vector along the direction given by the right hand thumb rule, which is A cross B, means you have to set your right hand in such a way that the natural rotation of your fingers indicate the motion from A towards B. From A towards B, that's the natural sense of rotation of your right hand. And once you set all of this, then you see the direction of your thumb, it directs into the plane, okay, the cross. That means if there is an arrow going into the plane, you see the tail of the arrow and that looks like a cross. So that is the cross product, and in that direction the unit vector is given as n cap. Okay, in case I write it as B cross A, that is again gonna be B sine theta n cap again, but n cap, in this case what happens, it becomes the opposite. How? Because then B cross A, if I set my right hand like this, then the finger is now giving the upward direction, so this is like up, and it is just the same amount but in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is what happens if I define n cap the way I have previously done, then here I have to put a negative sign. However, if this is an xy plane, this is x axis and this is y axis, then the z axis has to be upward. Okay, in that case I can write it as z minus z cap and then write it as z cap. Okay, and here you might ask, why exactly is it like, if this is x and this is y, why do we define z like this? Again, in order to, when we use axes, rectangular coordinate system, okay, the Cartesian coordinate system, we not only try to find the coordinates of the points, we also have to find the way they translate and also the way they rotate. So since we use unit vectors along x cap, y cap and z cap, so it is very easy if you orient the entire coordinate system according to the right hand thumb rule, then all the rotations can be easily follow the same tendency. That's why x cap to y cap, the rotation from x cap to y cap will indicate the direction z cap, which actually would be like this. Z cap will be upward. This is z cap. Okay, so that's why we place the coordinate axis, name the coordinate axis in accordance with the right hand thumb rule, so that all the rotations happening inside the coordinate frame can easily follow the rotational tendency or the cyclic order of our coordinate axis. That makes the things much simpler. And see, you can ask, why right hand thumb rule, why not left hand thumb rule? It's just a convention. Okay, most people, I guess there are most people who are involved in this in the formulation are right handed, so they prefer the right hand thumb rule, but left hand thumb rule works as well. However, once you choose which thumb rule you are going to use, which convention you are going to use, then you will have to follow it throughout, because you cannot just change abruptly from the middle. Okay, so we'll stick to right hand thumb rule throughout. Now let's think what happens when A crosses B. When A crosses B, this is B, when A crosses B, it is going to cover an area AB sine theta. However, if the same thing happens, I can say that if this is A and this is B, instead of A crossing B, I take B crossing A. I take B and I simply slide it over A so that B reaches here. In that case also, this is A and this is B. B goes from here to here, this being the common tail O. Okay, if B crosses A, then also the same parallelogram is obtained, and that also has the area AB sine theta. What is the difference? There is no difference in the area. However, when it comes to area, we also assign a sign to the area. We assign a direction to an area again by using right hand thumb rule. let's understand why is that necessary. Why can't we simply say A cross B as AB sine theta? Why do we have to give it a sign? Why do we have to take a unit vector? Why do we have to give a direction to this area, making the area as an area vector? What is the necessity behind? Why not defining like that, so that B cross A is the same as A cross B? Why is it wrong to tell that? For example, in dot products, we write A dot B, which is AB cos theta, cosine theta, and again B dot A is the same, BA cosine of theta. They both are the same, and the dot product is a scalar product. Okay, so the product does not have any directionality, but the cross product has a directionality. Why? Let's understand that. Again, we take the two vectors A and B. This is A and this is B, and there is an angle theta here. Now, when we talk about dot product, what happens? We see the dot product is also called a scalar product for a reason, because when we talk about dot product, what happens is we try to see how much can B scale A in the direction of A. Okay, so that means the component of B, if this is the line of action of A, okay, and this is the component of B, okay, this is the component of B, which is B times A, let's say the component of B on the line of action of A, then how much can BA scale A? Okay, that will be AB. This is, so basically BA is the scalability that B offers to A by virtue of its angle theta. So the net product will be A times BA, and we know that after the scaling, the vector which was initially A now becomes ABA, but in the same line of action. So we are only concerned about the scaling. We know the direction would be along the line of action, so directionality does not matter. And in the same case, again, if A scales B, then for example A has a AB, that's the projection of A on the line of action of B. So AB is basically the scalability of A that it offers to B. So again, it will become, this is BA's which is AB cosine of theta, and in this case it becomes, after the scaling, the vector that was initially B now becomes BAB, which is again B A cosine theta, which is the same as AB cos theta. So the scalability after the product, the net result is the same, and we know that whatever scaling is being done, it is either on the line of action of A or in the line of action of B. So we already know this specific line of action, so the directionality does not matter. What really matters is the scalability, the product. Okay, exactly, the scaling matters. Okay, it doesn't matter in which direction or what, because no new vector is getting generated here now. But in the cross product, this is not the same. Why not? Because we saw that in the cross product we got an area, we should have been content with that we have an area that is AB sine theta. We should be happy with that. Why are we using notations to see the directions? Why are you using right hand thumb rule to find a direction for that area? This is why. I'll show you. Let me clearly draw some coordinate systems again. Okay, so first of all, let's define A cross B, and here we are not going to use the short formula, which is AB sine theta n cap. Why? Because that does not give us the answer about the need for a directionality. Okay, so if I write it as okay, fine, let's write it as A cross B. Well, let us understand what it means in terms of components. See, because both of them are vectors, so here A is a vector, red RGB. So if I write x-axis like this is my x-axis, and this is my y-axis. Okay, so I have two axes now. Definitely the z-axis would be in this direction, out of the board, but I'll just show it in this board like this, slightly tilted, and that is z. Okay, now it is better that I put the unit vectors here, x hat, and then y hat, and then z hat. Okay, now both of the vectors A and B would, let's just say they are in this, let this be the origin. These two vectors are like this. Okay, let's say that there are two vectors which have some component. Each vector, the A has a component ax in x-axis, ay in y-axis, and az in z-axis, and then bx, by, and bz. Okay, however, to make it very easy to understand, let's focus on the xy plane, or as I said, z plane, what the things are, how things happen, how the crossing happens in terms of the components. Okay, let's say that the z axis is basically upward from here. The z axis is upward, and that is the z axis. It just comes out of the board from the origin. Now let's see, I use let us, as we are not bothered about what happens in the z axis, so I will simply cross these things. We don't need these, we need only these. Okay, ax, ay, bx, by. Okay, we are only looking at things as they happen in the xy plane. So ax, let's just define that this is ax, and this is bx. And then let's say that this is ay, and this is by. Okay, so now we have total four components, two components each for A and B. Now how does the crossing happen here? It's very easy to see the crossing, because when ax is crosses by, because ax cannot cross bx, because if ax crosses bx, they both follow the same line and there is no area, the area covered is 0. Okay, so in terms of area, when I say area, it basically defines the amount of space. In one dimension, the amount of space is length, but in two dimensions, the amount of space means area, and in three dimensions, the amount of space means volume. Okay, and in n dimension, it is n dimension volume or n volume. That is what we call the amount of space. Okay, but here, if ax crosses bx or ay crosses by, since they are in the same direction, there is no area covered. Okay, they're in the same line, there is no area covered. Okay, that's why we have to see how ax crosses ay and how ax crosses by, because a is made to cross b. That means ax crosses by and ay crosses bx. Okay, so if you talk about ax crossing by, okay, ax crossing by, so in that case it will become a rectangle. Okay, if ax crosses by, then the rectangle will have an area ax by. Okay, now ay has to cross bx, so ay has to cross bx. Again, that will also be a rectangle, and that area has to be ay bx, right? But the problem is, the way ax crosses by is not the same as ay crossing bx. Okay, for example, if you start from here and go and go through a distance of 10 meters and then come back by 5 meters, the net area, the distance that you covered is 5 meters. You have to subtract the opposite sense in which you moved. Okay, so the motion of 10 meters towards right is not in the same way the motion of 5 meters to the left, or even the, okay, because here you are moving from left to right, here moving from right to left. So definitely there is some net distance. You are not quite at the home, you are not quite at the home yet, because you have moved in the opposite direction, and even if you moved a total of 15 meter as distance, but you still 5 meter away from your home, not 15 meters, because the motion is from left to right and the motion in the second case is from right to left. Similarly, when you are taking these two cases, okay, when you are taking these two cases, when AX is moving through BY, AX is moving through BY, okay, if it is moving through BY, this particular motion is actually counterclockwise as seen from the origin. However, when you see AY moving through BX, okay, AY moving through BX, this particular is this is counterclockwise and this is clockwise as seen from O. Okay, this is negative as per the convention and this is positive. So the area covered is positive when AX crosses BY, but when AY crosses BX, the area covered is negative. So when you want to find the net area is given by AX BY minus AY BX. So there is a very simple technique to denote this particular operation, algebraic operation, and we do that by AX AY BX BY and put that in a determinant form, right? AX BY minus AY BX. So now you see why in cross product we use determinants. Since we are only talking about the crossing in the XY plane, we are only dealing with 4 components, so a 2 by 2 determinant would be enough for us to describe the entire operation. Okay, but if in general, that is why if in total if you want to describe the entire thing in all the entire cross product, now you see why it is necessary to define a particular direction to the area, is because not all areas are covered in the same way. Some areas are covered in anti-clockwise motion as seen from the origin, and some areas are covered in clockwise motion or clockwise movement as seen from the origin. So the areas covered, the amount of areas covered might be the same, but the directionality would matter, because the same thing, if I take over an area of 100 meters squared and then I release 50 meters squared, that doesn't make 150 meters squared, it makes only 50 meters squared area. That means I'm gonna have to have some algebraic signs to assign to these areas so that I can find the net area that I have after all my operations. Okay, that is why it is essential to have a sign assigned to the area covered when there is a crossing of vectors. Okay, that is why when you write A crosses B, which is negative of B crosses A. If A crosses B in clockwise fashion, then B will cross A in anti-clockwise fashion, and vice versa. Now, as we showed in in determinant form, AX, AY, BX, BY, to clearly specify not all the crossings would happen in the XY plane. The plane could have any kind of orientation. Like if there are two vectors A and B, not necessarily that the A and, of course it is obvious that two vectors would always be in a plane. Okay, two vectors would always be in a plane, but then that plane does not have to be XY plane or Z plane. Okay, it could be like this, it could be like this, it could be like this. In any way they could be oriented in any plane. Okay, so we have to find a general expression for the computation. So what we do, we assign all the 3 coordinates B, Z, and we put X hat, Y hat, and z hat, so that when we expand this particular determinant A cross B using the first row, which is the row of unit vectors, we'll know the components, because every cofactor, each entry of the first row is a unit vector, and it has a cofactor which is a simply scalar quantity. Okay, and the rule of expansion of determinants takes care of the signed areas. Signed areas means whether the area is positive or negative, or whether the positive, it means whether the area has been covered anti-clockwise manner or it has been covered in a clockwise manner. So whatever it is, by using this device, just like when we used only this part, we knew that this part is happening in z cap. Okay, but to generalize for any plane, we can use the 3x3 determinant, so that when we expand it using the first row, which is the unit vector row, we find that the net A cross B would be x cap times AY BZ minus left product minus right product AZ BY. Then you can write it as minus y cap, but then you're gonna have to, if you bring that a minus sign inside the parenthesis, you will have the same order, AY BZ AZ BY. Similarly, y cap will be, here it is, I'm gonna write it as plus, so I'll have to reverse that the trend of subtraction here, which is AZ BX minus AX BZ plus Z cap AX BY minus AY BX. Okay. For example, if the vectors that we define A and B, they totally lie in the xy plane, that means the z components are 0, so this becomes 0 and this becomes 0. So this will become 0 and this will become 0, only this part will remain. That means for two vectors which are being crossed by each other, okay, the entire vector product or the area covered will be in the z axis, but if A crosses B, then it is going to go in the negative z, and if B crosses A, it is going to come out in the positive z. So this is the intuition behind defining the cross products in a determinant form. Okay, so there is one thing now we have understood, and we are going to apply this to curl, that if there are two vectors A and B, for the cross product to be non-zero, whether positive or negative, we don't care. If it is going to be non-zero, the cross product, there has to be some sort of angle. Okay, there has to be some sort of angle. That means if I take A as a standard, then B is basically at a rotation of theta in the clockwise sense. If I take B as a standard, then A has to go through a rotation of theta in the clockwise sense. Okay. That means for the the cross product to be non-zero, A and B must have some sort of non-zero angle to each other, correct? And that is what we need in curl, because when I set this particular point as my reference, in the neighborhood, whatever vectors are, they need to have a net rotational tendency, and to have a net rotational tendency, the vectors must have a tendency to be at some angle from each other. Okay, the vectors would have to have some angle from each other, and it has to be in a way that the net would be either clockwise or anti-clockwise. It's not like there is a vector and this vector goes through theta and this goes through minus theta, and then the sum up as 0. That will give me 0 curl. But if all the vectors have a general anti-clockwise or clockwise tendency of rotation, then I'll have some curl. Okay, so let's understand curl, what it matters. Now again, in this for curls, let's say there is a vector field V and we want to find the curl. Okay, so in determinant notation, how we write it as x cap, y cap and z cap, then del upon del x, which is the partial derivative, del by del y, del by del z, and then vx, vy, vz. So if we just understand only what happens in the xy plane or the z plane, we can generalize this to all the three planes. So first of all, let us just draw. Let us first see that I have the x-axis. I'm explaining the curl now in the xy plane. So this is the x-axis. Let me make it a little bit larger. And here, this is my y-axis. And definitely, if that is the case, then I'll have my z-axis. This is point O, so the z-axis will be like this. It is like coming up towards me. Now, what happens? Okay, if I expand this, what I'm gonna get is x cap times del vz by del y minus del vy by del vz by del y minus del vy minus del z plus y cap times del vx by del z minus del vz by del x plus z cap times del vy by del x minus del vx by del y. Okay, if I expand this determinant, this is going to give me this expression, which is basically a vector. Again, the curl of a vector field gives you a vector, and the vector has three components: x component, y component and z component, right? If I write it as x component, y component and z component, x component is for green, this is the x component, and for y component I'm going to use red, this is the y component, and this is the z component. This is the z component. Okay, you can also see that from the unit vectors assigned to them. Okay, now let us just find what happens is the z component. Okay, for the z component, that means all that is happening is in the z plane, which is nothing but the xy plane. Whatever happens here, we can generalize that to the remaining two planes, right? So we need to understand the z component. That is easy to visualize here. Then the generalization will go on to the y component and the x component of the curl vector. Now what happens is, let us focus on this term here, this particular term, del vy by del x and del vx by del y. First of all, let's understand what is del vy by del x. That means the change of vy with respect to x. That means vy must be changing with x. As x increases, vy is going to be like this. Okay, vy is changing. You can see that the vy is increasing as x is increasing. Okay, y, it could decrease also, no matter, but then I want to keep del vy by del x as a general expression. I want to keep it positive, okay, so that I don't have to use a sign for it, because if del vy increases with the increase in x, then del vy by del x is positive. So that is the general expression. When we apply the formulation that we are going to obtain from here to any specific case where del vy by del x comes as negative, we simply have to put a minus sign. Okay, but for the derivation of the general expression, we're just going to assume, to keep things simple and easy, that del vy increases with del x. So things are positive here. We are trying to keep things as much positive as possible. So here del vy is increasing with del x, okay, and then del vx by del y, del vx by del y. The vx part is in green, so vx is increasing with del Vx is increasing. As y is increasing, our Vx's are also increasing. Okay, now look at this. Look at this particular thing. Okay, it's a very beautiful thing to see. First take this. I have drawn three corresponding ones. For this one, for a particular point here, this is Vx, this is Vx, and this is Vy. Okay, then point number 2, this is for point 1, this is for point 1, for point 2, and this is for point 3. Okay, so let's say there are 3 points like this. Okay, point 1, point 2, and point 3. For point 1, this is Vx, this is Vx, and this is Vy. Okay, this is Vy, and this is Vx. Okay, so point 1, this is, I get a vector Vx and Vy, sorry, Vx and Vy. Okay, so the net vector will be like this. If you have the x component and y component, then you will find the vector in this particular xy plane or z plane. This will be the net vector. And then when we move from point 1 to point 2, if the increase in Vy is the same as increase in Vx, then the vector, whatever the increase will be, okay, the vector will increase for sure, the vector will be bigger, but it will be in the same line. Okay, there will be no angle, because tan theta, as we see, tan theta is Vy upon Vx. The slope is given by the ratio of Vy and Vx. If the increase in Vy and if by moving to certain distance, these increases are proportional, like Vy increases at the same proportion as Vx increases, then the vector while going from 1 to 2 might get larger, but it will always be parallel to the vector at the point number 1. Similarly, at point number 3, the vector might get even further larger, but then it will be parallel to the remaining 2 vectors. That means we are going to get 3 vectors like this, and these 3 vectors are parallel to each other. Okay, maybe in line, if not in line, then maybe parallel to, at least parallel to each other. And when vectors are parallel to each other, if vectors are parallel to each other, then there is no net rotational tendency. That means if Vx is equal to, sorry, del Vy by del x is equal to del Vx by del y, that means del Vx, del Vy by del x is equal to del Vx by del y if, that means if the proportion of increase in this direction is the same as the proportion of increase in this direction, then the sum is in the entire thing, there is no curl at all. So that means del Vy by del x minus del Vx by del y is 0. Correct? That means the curl, the component of curl in the z axis, which we are trying to find out, becomes 0 if del Vy by del x is the same as del Vx by del y. What it essentially means is, by going from point 1 to point 2, the increase of Vy, the whatever increase happens to Vy, the same increase, the same change happens to Vx also. Okay, that means we might end up with a bigger vector when we go from 1 to 2, but both these vectors at point 1 and point 2 will be parallel to each other, and 2 parallel vectors do not rotate each other. Okay, they can only scale each other, but they cannot have any rotational effect. For example, if I assign this vector as A and this vector as B, these 2 vectors are parallel, they are in line or in parallel to each other. Okay, and 2 vectors, as we have discussed in cross product, 2 vectors A and B must have some angle theta. If they are parallel, theta becomes 0. So there is only scalability there. There is no crossability. So B offers no crossability to A, neither does A to B. Okay. So similarly goes to C or any vector. Okay. Now what happens if del Vy is more than del Vx? Sorry, this particular del Vy by del x is more than del Vy by del x. That means if I want to show you things in that way, let me just erase everything here. What happens if Vy increases much more rapidly than Vx does, is like here at point number 1, let's say this is Vx and this is Vy, but once you go to point number 2, Vx increases slightly but Vy increases much more. So here this is the vector, but here the vector is like this. And now you have vector 1 and vector 2, and if you just translate it to vector 1, this is vector 1 and vector 2. I take this vector 1 from here to vector 1. So now vector at 1 and vector 2 are inclined at some angle theta. So while I move from 1 to 2 in this vector field, I am getting a vector that has rotated by an angle theta in the anti-clockwise sense. I am starting to get some curl out here. Okay, so when we consider all the points, for example, this is my reference point, and I take point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, all the points in the neighborhood, and find the net tendency, I'll end up with a positive or a negative curl. That means in general, in the net effect, del Vy by del x might be larger than del Vx by del y. Okay, in that case this becomes positive, I'm getting an anti-clockwise curl. But if del Vx by del y is larger than del Vy by del x, then the net effect is clockwise, so there is a negative curl there. So we discussed all of this only in the z plane. Now the similar thing can also happen in the x plane and the y plane. So when we combine all the effects, okay, so we are going to end up with the expression that we got here. We only analyzed this particular plane. Now so similar thing happens in x plane, y plane and x plane. The combined effect of a curl of a vector field V can be given like this: x cap times del Vz by del y minus del Vy by del z plus y cap. Now I think you must have understood why the use of cross product, the concept of cross product is essential to find the curl. Because if you want to have a curl, if the field has a curl around some point, that means while moving from one point to the other point, the vectors would rotate by some angle theta. Okay, whether clockwise or anti-clockwise, it doesn't matter. So when you take all the points around in the neighborhood, take all the points in the neighborhood of the reference point, you will have a net tendency of anti-clockwise rotation or a clockwise rotation. Okay, so that is why this formulation is essential. So let me just clearly write it down. So it is del Vx by del z minus del Vz by del x plus z cap times del Vy by del x minus del Vx by del y. Okay, so this is the expression. Now I have already explained why the curl is expressed like this, why we are using these many terms. Okay, the concept of cross product is very essential to understand the concept behind the definition of curl. Okay, and this is how you have an intuitive understanding. If you have any issues, you just rewatch the video. If you still have any issues, then put your questions. If you have just general comments, you can put it below. If you have any questions, you can put it in the link on my website that I'm going to give you. You put your comments or questions there, I'll be able to answer you that. That will be all for this video. Thank you very much for watching.